And welcome back to a special edition of Saturday Agenda. I'm Joe Pinion. We're taking a hard look at President Biden's first 100 days, which of course all roads lead to China, as many conservatives are worried that he could be setting our nation back against China's gains towards dominance forever. Let's bring in our panel. Gordon Chang is the author of The Coming Collapse of China. Also with us is Seth Denson, business and market analyst. Good day to you both. Gordon, what concerns you most about the first 100 days as it relates to, number one, our spending in comparison to China, but also the policies that don't seem to exist to keep China in check at a time when they are really trying to expand their reach around the world?
What concerns me most, Joe, is the president's opinions and views of China. He has views that might have been appropriate in the early 1990s, but certainly are not now. He views China as a competitor, but it's really more than that. It's even more than an adversary. It's actually an enemy. And we know that because China has declared a quote-unquote people's war on us. So they view us as an enemy. And unfortunately, Biden doesn't have that framework. And without that framework, he really can't defend us.
Now, Seth, I want to get you approach here because you look at what China is doing. To Gordon's point, there's a very fine line between people who are adversarial and who are competitive. China is not adversarial. They're not competitive. They want world dominance, and they're planning on doing it on America's back. You start looking at the fact that they're trying to basically become the loan shark for the world with their roads and bridge plan. They're basically taking all the countries across the continent of Africa with rare earth minerals that we need for all of our technological devices. They are trying to monopolize practically every industry. And we have a president who seems to think that we can hold hands, play cards, and then grab a cup of whiskey afterwards and think that everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, China is playing a game of chess, and America's playing checkers here. China is thinking many moves ahead. They're seeing the long game. They've even published their 100-year plan, right? You mentioned, Joe, the Belt and Road Initiative. They now have seized power of control of power grids in Laos, airports in Zambia, naval ports in Kenya. Now this deal with Iran. And it's almost as if, well, not almost as if, they are doing it in America's face. They're looking at places where America is weak and trying to do things like sanctions and saying, no, we're going to step in here and take control and take the lead. They are showing themselves to be a prominent leader on the global scale.
I think you bring up a good point there. You talk about that 25-year alliance that they have now with Iran, $400 million, in many ways undermining the efforts we've made for peace and stability in the region. Meanwhile, you have President Biden trying to rejoin this Iran deal that was misguided from the start. Iran does not want to power their nation. They want the nuclear bomb. Gordon, how do we make sure that we as a nation can see China for what it is right now, an existential threat to humanity, planning to basically, in many ways, run the world in their own image?
Well, it's a great question, Joe, and I think the answer is we have to see what the Chinese are in fact saying about us. Because a lot of people here who want cooperation with Beijing, and I certainly can understand that, are not listening to what the Chinese are saying, and they're not looking at what the Chinese are doing. We can see, for instance, that they deliberately spread the coronavirus beyond their borders. That's 580,000 American deaths. And the issues just go on from there.
It's really crazy. Seth, you talk about that. I mean, we know for a fact that we have our own Department of Homeland Security said that China purposely and willfully downplayed the extent of COVID for the purposes of monopolizing the PPE supplies we needed to survive through the crisis. And yet at the same time, we have a president who views them as a competitor, who thinks that somehow we can find common ground. There's no common ground for a nation that literally spread death purposely and then prevented you from having access to the things you needed to save your own life.
Well, and meanwhile, Joe, they expanded their GDP while the rest of the world was in lockdown. Their global economy has actually grown, but the rest of the world is scared to call them out on this, in large part because China is buying world favor within their business, and China's business is good. The amount of investment that they're putting into these other countries means that those other countries are now subservient, and if we're not careful and we keep devaluing the dollar the way that we're doing it, America will be too soon.
Gordon, I want to switch to you briefly, quickly. You talk about what's happening with the Uyghurs. It is the largest detention of a group of religious minorities since the Holocaust. We have a president that not only won't speak to it, this first joint address didn't even bring it up, but got on the CNN town hall and called that abysmal policy, this ethnic cleansing happening in plain sight, a cultural norm. If anything we can agree on in America, it's that people should not be persecuted for their religious beliefs, much less sent to the slaughterhouse because of it. And America, the leader of the free world, is silent on the greatest atrocity we've seen in many ways since Rwanda.
Yes, we're talking perhaps 3 million Uyghurs, Kazakhs, and others being detained. We know that people are dying in those facilities because China's building crematoria next to them. But it's also just torture, it's brutality, it's institutionalized rape, forced organ harvesting in all probability. And we've seen slavery, institutionalized slavery. You put this all together, we're talking about atrocities the world has not seen since World War II.
Going to have to leave it there. Could talk about this all day. Gordon Chang, Seth Denson, thanks for joining us. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Joe.